let's look at today's question, guys. So this question is quite simple, but the implementation part is a bit tricky because it requires some advanced data structures and algorithms. Like I used an array list of my own object. Okay, so we'll look at the implementation. Let's read the question. The question says that Park Chanik. Okay, I'll use another word. Let's say Indra Verma. Okay, Indra Verma is the chief of the village of Dholakpur. One night filled with nights, a sudden important announcement needs to be notified to all the end residents of Dholakpur. So Indra Verma shares the announcement directly to one or more residents using cost P per person. After each resident gets the announcement, he can share the announcement using his. Each resident can share it using a device. However, the cost of this device for each resident is denoted by AI, and uh, sorry, the cost is BI for each share. That means each resident can share it to each person with the cost of BI, and each resident can share at most to AI more residents. So how what is the minimum cost for all N residents to get the announcement? So what all we know that P is the cost by cost per per sharing, let's say. Okay, cost per sharing by the chief, that is, let's say, Indra Verma, right? So P is that. What is an array A? Array A is for at most how many shares can be done by each individual resident. Max shares each ith resident can do. And what is array B? Just a second. Array B is the cost per share, cost per share for ith resident. That means each resident can share the news to one other person using cost BI, using cost B of I, and each ith resident can share it to at most AI residents, AI of I residents. Okay, so let's look at the test case. Okay, the test case, I'll just copy paste it, so we'll start working the problem. I think you get it that we'll use a greedy approach, right? You'll get the intuition. So in this case the N is 6, that is 6 residents. P, that is the cost per share if done by the chief, is 3. These are the for each resident the maximum shares that each resident can do, and this is the cost per sharing. So an ith resident can share it with using cost B of I per share. So what we'll do, we need to share it to all 6. In this case I'll just write it down. Okay, so resident 1, resident, I'll write it, resident 1, resident 2, resident 3, resident 4, resident 5, and resident 6. Okay, the font is really ugly, but you'll get the vibes. Okay, so these are all the residents. So how first, there's no, because no one knows the news now, so the chief himself has to deliver the news to someone. To whom should we deliver it? As we need to minimize the cost, we'll share it to a person who in turn can share it with a cost less than the cost for the chief itself, right? So this is P, this is N. So we'll share it to the people who can share it for cost which is less than 3. So in this case the resident 3 has cost less than 3, right? So he can share the news per person for cost 2, whereas the chief himself can do it by cost 3. So greedily we need to choose resident 3, so we'll choose him. So the total cost, let's say total cost till now. Okay, so a cost of 3, let's say we make, and he knows. Now this I'll change. So resident 3 knows. Okay, so we'll color it with blue. So now what we'll do now, as resident 3 knows, he can indeed in turn tell other residents, right? By a cost of 2 per person. So whom should he tell? To the next persons who have lesser cost. So according to the greedy approach, we'll sort the B array, right? We're looking for the cost. The ones who have the minimum cost per share, we are telling those residents first. So we'll tell, in this case we have okay, so resident 3 can tell 2 people at most, so using cost 2. So let's say he tells resident 2 and resident 5 because they have cost 3, right? The next minimum cost. So he tells resident 2 and resident 5, and as only 2 shares can be made by using resident 3, so it is now exhausted, right? So we'll mark it. So he has exhausted his shares. Now we resident 5 and resident 2 know, and they have 1 share and 3 shares accordingly. And again we can also use the chief himself, okay? But as there is a cost which is, so in a general array, if there is a cost less than or equal to the cost of the chief, then we'll use that cost because that is more beneficial. And if the cost is greater than that of the chief, we'll use the chief himself to deliver the news. This is the greedy approach. So the approach is, we'll sort, just a second, we'll sort okay, as A and B are linked, okay, because each individual I is a resident, ith resident, he has an a particular AI and particular BI, right? And they are linked. So we need to sort the pair of AI. Let's a pair of A of I and B of I exist, okay? And we need to sort this pair because they are interconnected, right? If we sort B and don't sort A, it's not compatible, right? Because for each I there is a particular B itself. They are this exists in a pair for each resident. This is a quantity for each resident, that he has a particular AI, he has a particular B of I. So we'll sort the pair B of I using which value? So A of I or B of I? B of I, right? Because this is the cost per person for sharing. So we'll sort it using the value of B of I, right? Pairs using B of I. And once we sort it in increasing order, so B of I in increasing order, when we'll sort it, the, let's say, original array was A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, and B array was B1, B2, B3, B4, B5. So our pair will be, pair 1 will be A1, B1, pair 2 will be A2, B2, likewise all other pairs, okay? And once we sort it using the B as a parameter, what will happen is that pair 1 as an array, once we sort it, the indices changed, right? So now the indices will change. So the first pair will have, let's say, once we sort it, let's say it becomes like B5, B4, B1, B2, B3, and this sort is in, let's say, as usual, increasing order, right? So like this, in increasing order, this is the condition, okay? This will be valid, but there is no constraint on A, or there is no sequence of A. These are independent values, but for each B there exists a unique A. So let's say the pair 1, which will be the minimum B in the array, it will be B5. So accordingly the pair will have A5 here. A is not sorted, A is just here because B is here, and B is here because we have sorted it. So similarly, pair 2 will have B4, A4, pair 3 will have, according to this case I am taking, okay, this one. So B3 will have B1 and A1, and P4 will have P2, A2, P5 will have, what is remaining, b3. So b3 comma a3. I think you have gotten the concept. So we'll be sorting using this, using the b, and then we'll iterate through this array. And how we'll iterate that, we'll check if this value is less than p, if this value, the cost per share, is less than p itself. What is p? For the chief, the cost for the chief. If it is less than that, then we'll surely use that resident to share the news with other residents, else we'll use the chief himself. And once we use this, how many people can we tell? A5 amount of people. So that is the greedy approach. I'll tell you the code. Okay, the problem is solved. The implementation is difficult. Okay, the whole question is simple except the implementation part. See, as A and B are interconnected, and for even if we sort B, we need A such that for each individual B there should be a respective A there, right? So A and B exist in pair only, they are intertwined. So we create a new object named pair. And how will we do this? We'll use a class pair. What is a class? A class is a blueprint. So in this blueprint we'll define what will we have. It will be having integers, right? Like numbers, right? So I'll take it in the long form. So I am creating a blueprint named pair which will have these definitions. This is a class. Class is a blueprint. Blueprint will have definitions or structure, right? And once we create the structure, this is an object, right? We'll be calling this as an object. So once we call an object, as you can see, I accept A differently, B differently, but when I intertwine them, when I make them as a single object, the A and B, we are creating a new array list. Okay, array list of this pair objects. What is an array list? Array list is just a list, right? But we are using a pair data type, right? A pair which we have defined. And once we create this, we add the objects pair, and when we add them, we pass the values. And where will this go? This will go to a constructor. We need a constructor here. The constructor initializes the values. So when we call an object named pair, in this case when we add a new, okay, there itself I am creating the new object. So when we add, we create a new object, and when we create a new object, we are calling a initializing constructor. And this constructor, this accepts a long value and another long value. And as okay, this might be confusing because I have used B and A everywhere, but this dot B means that the class, the property of this object, that this dot B, the property of this object according to this blueprint, this dot pair, for this object the value of this property will be B. What is this B? This B is the parameter which will be passed here, and this dot B is by definition the property of the class. Okay, so instead I could have used here z, y, y. Okay, this dot A and this dot B is the class property from the blueprint, and the RHS, towards the RHS, the B and A are the parameters which we have passed. But as we have used this dot B equals to B or this dot A, the Java itself is smart enough to understand it. So okay, Java is pretty smart, we are dumb, we know that. So we'll continue. So once I create a list, in this list I have added all the pairs, and once we, okay, now sorting the pair is also difficult. In arrays we directly do arrays dot sort array, or else in this also we can do directly collections dot sort v. But as this v, this linked list consists of objects which are created by us, so it needs to know, right, that according to which parameter should we compare or should we sort, because there are two values here, two properties. Then then according to which property should we sort? To tell this is the new lambda function, that in comparison this x and y here, I'll tell you the syntax. This x and y here represents the two values, arbitrary values, that are compared while sorting. So these are the two objects of v. So we are sorting an array list v, and to tell it how do we need to sort this array list v, we are using this lambda function. This is the lambda function, and this lambda function, in this lambda function, this x and y are two objects of v. And what is the object? The pair object that we have created. So of this, because sorting is done by comparing two elements and using an algorithm, right? But in each algorithm we just compare two elements and move onwards. So these two are the arbitrary x and y we are assigning as the two objects that are we are comparing. And then we tell it that to compare it on basis of x dot b and y dot b, that object 1's b parameter and object 2's b parameter. We sort it according to this. This is what tells the Java to sort it according to the b parameter. So once we sort it, it will be in increasing order as always, because okay, you'll get into what you can do is you can just go to the class, right? You documentation, it will be very easy. So this is a lambda function. So lambda function Java. You can go to the official documentation by Oracle. I'll encourage you to read this, guys. It's very informative, and once you get to know what is happening under the hood, you get the intuition fairly easily when you are solving the problems, because you know why this has been created, why this lambda expression was created and all. Okay, so I'll encourage you guys to read it. Okay, it's not I don't expect you guys or myself, okay, I don't know any I can't understand 100% of this. I'll tell you that I will not able to understand even 20% of this, but whatever I can understand is beneficial for me, right? So I'll read this and you can also read this. Okay, this is very a good habit, that read the documentation and find what's happening under the hood. Like I didn't know the hash maps, so I just did hash map Java and I read the documentation. And in that documentation, just a minute, in that documentation I got to know that in null values, this is a very cool statement. I need you to, I'll not tell you this, okay, it's a task for you. This statement, this might come in handy, okay, this statement in documentation. I'll leave it up to you guys, okay. I have given you a quick short problem, not a problem, a task, okay. Just read this and get full understanding of what this sentence tries to convey. Okay, so hash maps, all its functions that we can use all these functions. So documentation is quite helpful. So yeah, we'll be moving on. Once we sort the array, so first the answer, right, the first will be that a chief tells someone, okay, he needs to tell someone. So shared will be 1. We'll initialize the answer because cost p will be done, and he'll share it to one person. And who will that person be? According to the sorted array, the first resident whose p is less than that of whose sharing cost b, the property b, is less than the p. So if it is greater than equal to p, then we'll directly come out of the loop, that because after that it is in sorted in increasing order, right? So if we come across a property b which is greater than p, then for all other objects after that it will always be greater, right, because it is in increasing order. So once we find a property which is greater than equal to p, we'll break, and else we'll just use that amount. So we'll increase it by whatever. This is maths, okay, just basic maths. You will get to know what I have done here. And finally, what this tells us is that once so if let's say if okay, I'll explain it using the Excalibur. So what I mean to say is, let's say there are n residents. I'll use different thing, okay. So P is, let's say, 5. The number of residents is 15. And up cost up till now, okay, total cost, let's say it was 32, and I have told cost up till now was 32, and I have told all 10 residents. There are 5 residents remaining. But now what is the case is that there is no resident who already knows the news. Okay, just listen carefully, I'll repeat it slowly. Now there is no resident present who knows the news. Okay, what am I saying is that no resident left with all these properties. Okay, these are the properties which the resident, okay, no resident left with who knows the news, so he can share it with other people, right? He knows the news. And the other thing is his cost, that is his property B, cost per person, cost for sharing it to one person, his cost B is less than P, less than equal to case doesn't matter, because in equal to case it can either be that the resident should share the news or the chief should share the news, it doesn't matter. So we'll just consider this. So there is no person who knows the news, so he can share it to others, and once he knows the news, his cost is less than the cost of the chief, so there is no other resident left. So what happens in this case? Because these are the conditions in which we choose the resident, right? We choose that this resident which has these properties should tell the news to other resident. But as there are no residents left with these properties, the chief himself has to share the news. So that is what I have done here, that the chief once we break, because there are no other elements which are which have property that is less than P, the property B is less than P, so we break, and to all the other residents directly P is shared. This is what I've done, that all the total shared using the algorithm. Once we come out of this algorithm, this loop, let's say this this is an algorithm, okay, this snippet is also an algorithm, because what this does is this assigns the residents the most favorable residents, right? So this favorable residents we assign, and once we come out of it, all the remaining people, for all the remaining other people, P, the chief himself, shares the news bearing a cost of P. Okay, and in this case, as you can see, this was the individual cost per person, right? And these many people were assigned by him. A is the maximum people, so A people times per the cost per person, so it will be this cost. Okay, so this was the question. I think you guys should implement it in whichever language you're comfortable or you're using. You should solve this question, implement this question. This is easy question, but understanding this, that why we are using a object pair. I've created an object pair here, and then I have used a constructor. What is the difference between a constructor? I'll tell you. As you can see, constructor, what this does is a special type of function. It is not, we can argue with this, okay, some people say that it is or not. I'll tell you, it is a special sort of method, not a function, a method which initializes an object. So an object is initializes this when we create a new object using the keyword new is what instantiates. What does instantiate mean? Like when we create this blueprint, right? When we create this blueprint, it just is a theoretical, or what we can say, a dreamed of version that it should exist. But when we use the keyword new, this is when it is actually instantiated. Like what I mean is, this just exists in a virtual world. If we use an analogy, I'll say that this is the pseudocode, that not even a pseudocode, this is the thinking process in my mind, that I'll do this and this and all. This is my thinking process. And once I implement the code, once I start writing the code, it means I have created it. It means I have instantiated it. I have made it exist in reality. Once I instantiate it, I use a constructor to instantiate it, because when we pass these values, what is a constructor? A constructor just initializes. So as you can see, it has no return data type, because it's not its function, right? It doesn't return any value. It just takes values and initializes them. This is a constructor. Sorry, I'm not able to uh, tell it to you more clearly, but I think you'll get the okay. Once you'll hear it, twice you'll hear it, at least in after 100 days or 200 days, when you'll hear it somewhere else again, you'll say that yeah, I have heard this and this is somewhat logical for me. So a constructor has no return type, because that's not what it does. And also it just initializes the value of the object when the object is instantiated. That means it is created into reality. It is made to exist in the reality. Okay, that was it. See, the problem is not the point, the thinking that firstly, what is this? CP is problem solving using time limit. And secondly, this all this new stuff, that what all we can use and why we have used it, why we have used a new object itself, and why have we used this lambda function, because it doesn't, we can't sort it, because it doesn't know, right? Java doesn't know to sort a pair is an object which create by you. Java doesn't know anything about it. So how can you tell Java that sort it using this as a parameter, using the b as a parameter, property b? So we tell it using this is called a lambda function. Okay, this was a pretty cool learning problem, right? I have learned a lot from this problem. I took 2 days to just get into all the stuff it was requiring, like uh, constructors and the lambda function and all. Okay, this video will be long, but that's why it is long, right? This was pretty heavy stuff. Okay, thank you guys.